Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Small. Uh, First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Los Angeles Public Library and Julie Bill for hosting tonight or this afternoon, your time tonight for those of us on the East Coast. We greatly appreciate this forum, Julie, and be able to talk about something we think is fun and interesting. A little bit of a scene center. I was fortunate enough to work for Major League Baseball for 43 years. 28 of that was spent on the international part of the game and in the growth and the business development for Major League Baseball. I had the great fortune to live and work in Tokyo for 16 years when I looked after our Asia business based out of Tokyo. And that's a place that I grew to love as much as the country I was born in. I was also fortunate enough to be a part of the first MLB group back in 1992 that went to Prague. It was Czech Republic then. It had recently been Czechoslovakia, so it was right after the Velvet Revolution, and I got to see firsthand since then, and also in my work leading the World Baseball Classic with the Czech team to really get an up close and personal look at Czech baseball. So I'm really excited to have these four people part of this discussion tonight. It's a subject that I'm familiar with, and these are the experts to dive in deep on all of these areas. They're talented storytellers, and I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from them tonight. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our first panelist. Michael Clair is the Senior Manager of Storytelling and Special Projects at MLB.com. He's specializing in international baseball and the World Baseball Classic. He has written and appeared on the MLB shows Carded and Inside Stitch. He's featured in the coverage of the official World Series or World Baseball Classic, London Series, and All-Star Game programs, and is published in the Baseball Prospectus and is associated in the other associated annals with Baseball Prospectus, as well as the Japanese Baseball Magazine number. Claire was given the 2024 Global Ambassador Award from MLB. He lives in Brooklyn and with his wife, and plays in the punk band The Subway Ghosts. Am I right, Michael? Your wife doesn't play in the Subway Ghost Week.
She does not, but she is she's always in the front row. Uh thanks Jim for the introduction. Hey everybody, thank you everybody for coming out and jumping on the Zoom. Without Jim, not only is there probably no international baseball the way we know it, but I would not be doing what I do. So an honor to be here. My first book, We Sacrifice Everything to Baseball, just came out on the Czech Republic, and I see a Czech Republic hat in the Zoom. And for those who don't know, the Czech Republic is their baseball team is all amateur. They all have day jobs, from the manager who's a neurologist to one of the pitchers who is the team's head of marketing and communications to the man Andre Satoria, who you might know, the electrical technician who struck out Otani. And I will just quickly show a quick clip from one of the films we shot with them that you can see on YouTube. But here is just a trailer in case you don't know them that well.
We are a small country and we have big dreams.
We are blessed to be here, but at the same time we don't want to just participate. We are looking forward to see if we grew over the last 4 years.
It was really important. We show Czech baseball on the worldwide baseball map.
You can see more kids starting playing baseball.
Before it would be their third or fourth choice, but now we are getting the top athletes.
Satoria strikes out Otani.
Not just strike out Shohei Ohtani, but he striked out first 6 hitters from Japanese lineup. How is this possible? Amazing.
I see more confidence as a team. We have higher goals. Kind of just special to be a part of.
I believe this can really explode.
Check on 3. 1, 2, 3, check!
Thanks, Jim.
So cool. Thanks. We're going to come back to you later. We have a lot of questions for you. Our second panelist, Aaron Fischman, is an award-winning sports writer, editor, and multimedia journalist who was born and raised in Los Angeles, has a master's in journalism from the USC's Annenberg School. He created and hosted the long-running On the NBA Beat podcast. His debut book, A Baseball Gaijin, Chasing a Dream to Japan and Back, is a cultural-heavy nonfiction story centered around the American pitcher Tony Barnett's 6-year experience in Tokyo. Not just telling Tony's tale, the broader narrative shines a light on the various redemptive journeys of fellow foreign players, capturing stories of perseverance, determination, and never giving up on your dream. For those of you that are there in the library tonight, hard copies will be available for purchase at the conclusion of the event. Aaron, I think you have a clip to show us as well to start off. Can you tell us about what we're about to see?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jim. And I'll go to Mike in a second because Michael Clair will be helping me play the clip. But so Tony Barnett, in his 6th and final season with the Yakult Swallows, he led the team, a long-suffering franchise, to its first Japan series in 14 years. This was back in 2015. And not only was it the franchise's first Japan series appearance in 15 years, but also it was over their bitter rivals, the Yomiuri Giants, basically the New York Yankees of Japan, given all their championships over the many decades dating back from the 50s. So in this clip that Mike is about to play for us, you'll see Tony get the final out, spoiler alert, and then there'll be a celebration on the field. Thanks, Mike. And we're gonna skip a little ahead. This part is called doage. It's a lifting up ritual where they're lifting up coaches, players, and then Tony was kind of on the left side of the screen. He was doing a star jump, which ended up becoming a viral meme on social media, at least on Twitter. But yeah, it's in the book.
Great. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing more from you, Aaron. Dr. Robert Fitz is a baseball historian who specializes in Japanese baseball. He has published 11 books on the topic, including Mashi, The Unfulfilled Dreams of Masanori Murakami, and Banzai Babe Ruth, Baseball, Espionage, and Assassinations during the 1934 tour of Japan, which won the Seymour Medal for the best baseball book of 2012. His latest book is The Japanese Baseball Behind the Scenes of Nippon Professional Baseball, which just received a silver medal at the Independent Publishers Book Award. And as we joked about earlier, Rob is his own clip. So smile and wave, Rob. That's all the audience needs now. That's all the introduction you need.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, we're going to come back to you later as well. Finally, we have Yuriko Romer. Yuriko is an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Her feature documentary, Diamond Diplomacy, is about the U.S.-Japan relations through a shared love of baseball. Romer's previous films include Baseball Behind Barbed Wire, a short about the WW2 Japanese American incarceration and feature documentary, Mrs. Judo, from 2012 about Keiko Fukuda, from 1913 to 2013, the first woman to attain the 10th degree black belt in judo. It was broadcast nationally on PBS and was seen around the world in several different film festivals. It got the Grand Jury Award for the Best Documentary in the 2013 International Festival of Sports Films in Moscow. Additionally, her thesis, Occidental Encounters, won the Student Academy Award, the gold medal, and Heartland Film Festival's Jimmy Stewart Memorial Crystal Heart Award. She holds an MA in documentary filmmaking from Stanford University, and is a teaching fellow with the National Academy of Television Arts and Science Scholar, American Association of Japanese University Women Scholar. Yuriko, I hope I didn't gloss over anything because there's a lot there. Congratulations and thank you for joining us tonight. I think you have a clip as well to show, so tell us a little bit about what we're going to see.
Well, I'm going to show you a trailer of Diamond Diplomacy. And Jim, I should have cut that down and made it shorter for you to read there. But let's see. Let's just let it play. And is this the one? This is not the one. Is it this one? No. Hang on. Sorry. I have to call up the right one before I can show it to you. Okay, that's what I get for having two clips on here.
We'll watch them both.
Well, but I'm supposed to show the other one later. Oh my God. Okay, sorry. This is my. Okay, I got the right one here. Okay, there we go. All right.
Nice.
Okay.
Putting on a baseball uniform was like putting on the American flag.
Baseball so suits the Japanese that if Americans hadn't invented it, the Japanese probably would have. Baseball became the national sport in Japan in 1896.
Japan also thought of baseball as its national game.
Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Lefty O'Doul went over to Japan to play a Japanese all-star team.
So Muda used a blinding fastball to strike out Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Jimmy Fox in succession.
Japanese were baseball crazy.
That passion carried over once they came to America. But they couldn't play in Major League Baseball because of the Jim Crow laws.
During the war, Japanese soldiers yelled out in English, "Babe Ruth is a bum."
Not only did they have to spend 4 years incarcerated, now they had to come back to absolute hatred.
The Japanese morale was slowly coming back through baseball.
You couldn't pronounce their names, but the books will tell you the Japanese can play the game.
There are many players that went to Japan. When a Japanese pitcher hits a player, they usually tips his hat in apology. Well, he didn't tip his hat.
Next day in the newspapers, foreigner causing trouble again.
一番記憶に残ってるのは、第1球を投げるまで。ストライク!
Throughout the United States, the game became truly international.
Nomo means strikeout in any language.
Before Nomo went to the United States, you ask an American, name a famous Japanese, and nobody could do it.
Ichiro, he's the new all-time hit king. From Ohtani, strikes out swinging. Ohtani and Japan celebrate a World Baseball Classic championship.
MacArthur said bringing baseball to Japan was one of the greatest acts of diplomacy ever.
It was well worth the wait. Here we go. It's so fun to see that clip, and I encourage all of you. We'll talk a little bit about where you can see the movie in a little bit, but it is really, really well done, as is the writing of the three other panelists that we have. So what we're going to do tonight is break up the conversation into three different segments, and then we're going to leave plenty of time for those online or those in LA, at the library to ask some questions. So I'm going to set up the first segment is just talking about, it's a global game. The baseball was born in America, but now it belongs to the world. And, there are 180 countries and territories around the world that have baseball and softball federations. More than a quarter of MLB players were born outside the United States. Baseball is an Olympic sport. And when you combine MLB and NPB and all the other leagues around the world, it's over a $15 billion industry. So yes, baseball is big, and it belongs to the world. And I'm going to start with Michael. If I ask people to name 180 countries that have a baseball and softball federation, I'm not sure Czechia would be at the top of everybody's list. Can you tell us a little bit, because your book does a great job of touching on this, about how baseball got started there, and how it developed over the past few years, in Czechia?
Yeah, it's really remarkable to watch baseball's growth over the last generation, really, the last 20 years since the World Baseball Classic. But baseball, you know, in a remedial form known as playground ball, it comes to what was then Czechoslovakia in 1921 from a man with the remarkable name Joe First. Makes sense. And he's actually now known more for founding archery and some basketball and volleyball than his work with baseball. But World War II, like in many other parts of Europe, England actually had baseball really growing in the 1930s until World War II. Baseball stops. It starts coming back in Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia in the 1960s, around the time of the Prague Spring, when students began bringing in Western ideas, and Russia was sort of releasing a little bit of control there. Because the thing is that they were allowed to play because of Cuba, especially in the 1970s and 80s, but it was not encouraged. It was seen as a tool of Western imperialism. And in fact, that was both a stated and non-stated goal after World War II in Germany and Italy, to American service members to spread baseball, because how can you have democracy without baseball? But the story of this modern...
But to interrupt you there, but the Cuba thing is interesting, right? Because a lot of the early teachers of baseball in the Czech Republic were Cubans or Czechs that went there to study medicine and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, and all the baseball equipment that was available at that time was all Cuban. And in the 1970s, a team of Cuban players came over. That was the first time, quote unquote, like professional players were visiting Czechoslovakia. So it's kind of this, remarkable tie. In fact, Willie Escala, who plays for the Czech team, his mother is Czech-Cuban because she left Czechoslovakia, moved to Cuba, met his father, and now they live in Miami. But the growth of Czech baseball really begins post Velvet Revolution, fall of the USSR. It's a period when the country itself wants to adopt the West. I actually learned that all the Czech-style pubs were not popular in the early 90s. They wanted French restaurants and Italian restaurants. They didn't want anything that tied to the past. And it's at this time that baseball really starts to grow. People like Bill Artsy, Jim Jones, Stan Lukatich, Jeff Samuels. These might not be names but to international baseball people, these coaches are legends. They're heroes for spreading the game. There's a couple thousand players by the early 2000s when the Czechs really focused on development and growing their player pool. And now there is about 25 to 30,000 playing. And it is largely because of baseball development, the WBC, Olympics, and the push from the federation, from their managers, from their players, that this is a sport that we want to be able to compete at a professional level, even though, unlike other places, I see there's a lot of feedback. I'll switch from my AirPods after this if that's on me. It's the last decade where things have really changed for the Czechs.
Right. You mentioned the WBC. Were you in Regensburg with us that night when they won, when they beat Spain?
Yes, I was in when they beat Spain.
Yeah.
And
So tell us about that very quickly,
yeah,
because talk about what I was impressed with, and I'll scene set real quick, is, Czech, there was a qualifier for the 23 WBC in Regensburg, Germany, and Czech got blown out by Spain in the pool play, and then played him again for out of the losers bracket, and the winner got to go and play in Tokyo in 2023. And really, I think you would agree that the fortunes of Czech baseball really changed on that one game. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then what the aftermath was for them going to Tokyo?
yeah. So in that game, they're expected to lose. Spain's team had multiple major leaguers on it because Spain can have players from Cuba, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, baseball strongholds. And the Czechs did not. They had Martin Schneider, whose day job is a firefighter. He works 24-hour shifts before he gets 48 hours off. So the Czechs play their games over the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So at best, he's missing 1 out of every 3 games. He'd only pitched about 14 2/3 innings that year, and he goes 6 1/3, gives up 1 run to Spain, and the Czechs win this game. It's a huge deal. They have never once in their history, gone to the World Baseball Classic. And that changes everything. The attention from sporting federations, the attention from fans in the Czech Republic, the money from the World Baseball Classic, that has allowed them to now grow their program. And we see it once they reach Tokyo. They have now formed partnerships with Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and the United States. The Czechs are now developing their program through global baseball, and that doesn't happen without the World Baseball Classic and this one magic night in Regensburg. And what's interesting, it's in Germany. The Germans and Czechs are rivals. All those German fans became Czech fans because they saw them as the European baseball team.
Yeah, and they are now the model, right, for the other teams in Europe. If Czech can do it, we can do it.
Yeah, Croatia is growing their program, trying to be like the Czechs. Poland is growing their program, trying to be like the Czechs. And even the bigger teams like Netherlands and Italy are taking inspiration from the Czechs, whether it's from their marketing, their social media, or just simply, how they want to make homegrown players more of a priority.
Yep. And we're going to tie it back into Japan here. The Czech Republic beat China on a late 3-run homer to qualify for the 26th tournament in Tokyo. And a really, really cool thing happened is Japan was playing later that night, and it was one ticket for both games. And so by the time the late innings of the first game, the China-Czech Republic game, were happening, there were probably 30,000 people in the stands, and they'd never played in front of 30,000 people before. And Japan, all the Japanese fans kind of took on, a fandom of the Czech Republic, and that continues to today, right? And there's a deep connection now between Japan and Czechia. Is that right?
Yeah. So what the fans saw, and Japanese baseball Japanese fans love amateur baseball. It's why the Koshien, the high school tournament, which I believe is still going on right now, is arguably the biggest baseball tournament in Japan. And so many of the fans saw something similar in the Czechs, that these are guys with day jobs. They are not professionals, but they can play at a professional level. And when Ohtani posted respect on his Instagram, when he wore the cap to Miami, that led it to selling out immediately. Now Andre Satoria, the electrician, he's an electrical technician, but it's a little easier to say electrician, so he's happy to let that spread. He is stopped on the streets in Tokyo and asked for autographs. He has never been recognized outside of the baseball, outside the ballpark in his hometown of Ostrava, which is on the Poland border. I have seen more Czech hats in Japan than I've seen in Czech Republic. They're Facebook fans. Japan's the number 1 nation. USA's the number 2 nation. Czech Republic's actually the number 3 nation for them. But it's those games and the fact that Satoria could have walked Ohtani. There's a runner on second, no one on first. The smart play, walk Ohtani, but there was something about they're here to play, to compete, to do their very best to try and win, and that has made them sort of this underdog beloved by baseball nations around the world.
Yeah, so cool. Yuriko, if Czech Republic is on one side of the spectrum, I think we all agree Japan is on the other side of the spectrum, and baseball's been played in Japan almost as long as it's been played in the United States, almost as long as there's been baseball. Your film does just a beautiful job of laying out the origins of Japanese baseball, and I think you have a clip to show us that kind of lays some of that out. Do you mind sharing with that with the group?
Okay, yeah. Now I have to switch the thingies. Okay, here we go.
And while she's doing that, it was brought over by a Mainer named Horace Wilson. There's been some debate about whether it was Wilson or in 1872 or some sailors from the USS Colorado that was docked in Kobe Harbor less than a year before that. But regardless, it started out around then, right? About it with Horace Wilson over.
The official history sort of Rob can dispute if he wants, but for the purposes of the film, we went with the 1872. And it is kind of the beginning of the opening of Japan to the Western world, and they're very busy trying to bring in Western talent and Western technology. And Wilson gets invited as a teacher, basically. And the way I see it was he had grown to love baseball during the Civil War. He was a Civil War vet, and he packed his bat and his ball with him. And the rest is history, basically. So let's see. I'm basically going to show you the beginning of the film, but it gives you a little inkling into history.
Japanese have been playing baseball almost as long as the Americans have.
We shall never completely understand the Japanese mind. But then, they don't understand ours either.
They are as different from ourselves as any people on this planet.
In the United States, baseball was touted as the national game, and Japan also thought of baseball as its national game.
The history of Japanese baseball is the history of relations between Japan and the U.S.
Thank you. Yuriko, for you and for Rob, there was, I want to touch on something that was really, really interesting part of the film, but also really a seminal part for Japanese baseball, and that's the Ichiko High School versus YCAC. And first, Yuriko, could you talk a little bit about that? And then maybe Rob, you jump in about the significance of those games and what it meant for baseball in Japan.
Well, so in Japan, there was baseball going on in all kinds of places in different ways, but the Ichiko was basically the prep school that gets you towards the university of what became University of Tokyo. And they decided that they should have a baseball team. So they had a baseball team, and they took it on, and they were practicing hard. And I think there was some feeling that what they needed to do was the Japanese team needed to play against some Americans just to get a sense of are we doing it in the way that we actually want to be doing it. So So they eventually got this match set up against the YCAC, which is the Yokohama Athletic and Country Club, which is it's like an expat country club. So the military, the expats, business people that were there, the traders, all that stuff. So there were Americans there, and they also had lots of sports teams, but they had a baseball team. So they finally managed to get this match set up, and the baseball team from Ichiko, the high school kids, basically beat the YCAC team. And you could argue that, oh well, Ichiko was practicing every day, and the YCAC guys were probably busy drinking and playing in between. But I don't know, Rob, you can fill in on that.
I mean, you're underselling a little bit. They beat them soundly. I think the combined scores were something like 82-18 or something for the 3 games. And Rob, what did that signify, and what did it mean to people in Japan to have these high school kids take down these bigger, taller foreigners? Rob, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I just had to unmute.
Sorry.
It's a really interesting event because it had been used. It was used for propaganda right away. So at the time in the 1890s, Japan is kind of becoming muscular. It has invaded China. It is looking into taking over Korea. It's building up its military, and it wants to become a major power like the European powers. And so once the high school kids beat the adult Americans, it became front page news. And it became front page news not only as a sporting event, but also as a cultural event, showing that the Japanese kids could take on Americans, American adults. Now, like I said, it's kind of propaganda because, as Yuriko kind of alluded to, these are high school kids, and actually they're old high school kids because it's an elite high school that goes into the university. So these kids are not 14. They're closer to 15, 16, 17, and they're practicing every day. And they're playing a bunch of old guys who, sit around and have jobs and don't practice that often. But it became quite, like I said, a propaganda to use to build up Japanese esteem, but it also, in the baseball world, it propelled the popularity of baseball throughout the entire islands. So soon, by the time you hit 1905, baseball is really Japan's national pastime, and almost every high school has a team.
And I've read, I don't know if you agree with this, I've read somewhere that Ichiko was the first kind of Bushido baseball example, and you can draw a through line because high school baseball was then the pure, real baseball, and you could draw a through line with that to Koshien. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The story goes, and it seems to fit, that Ichiko was populated by the children of the samurai class, and they brought in a lot of the values of the samurai, and they applied them to baseball. And this is a time where there's a resurgence of interest in samurai at that, and the so-called values of samurai, very big around the turn of the 20th century. So they purposely brought martial arts and samurai mentality to baseball at that time. And because they were so successful, other teams followed suit and started adopting that approach into their baseball. So yeah, you can see it go all the way into modern baseball, although every generation it lessens.
So I'm going to stay with you, and we're going to fast forward the time machine from Ichiko to all of, to who I think of the big four, and people can make a case that there are other players that came to Major League Baseball from Japan that had impact and should be discussed. But to me, it's Mashi, Nomo, Ichiro, Otani. And I know that is probably a 10-part book series that you could write on it. But when we see, can you encapsulate a little bit about what these guys have done to globalize the game in Japan and in the United States, and and what the significance is of them coming over and achieving what they've achieved at Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. So each of the four have bring something different to the table. So we'll talk about them in turn. And I'm going to add a fifth who's very important. But we'll start with Mashi. Mashi comes over in 1964. And he comes over as a minor leaguer as part of an exchange program. He's only 19 when he comes over. And he is assigned to single-A baseball. Now, we need to backtrack a little bit. So starting in 1949 with the San Francisco Seals and then moving to the 50s, major league teams are coming to Japan to play exhibition series almost every year. And by I would say 53, these teams are looking at the Japanese players and thinking, aha, this is a talent pool that we are interested in. Maybe not yet, but in the future. So we go up to 1964, and there becomes an exchange between the Nankai Hawks of the Pacific League and the San Francisco Giants of MLB to bring some of these minor league players over to the U.S. for seasoning. Mashi's one of them. He does very well in the minor leagues. He gets pulled up in September to the San Francisco Giants, where he does fantastic. And he comes back the following year in 65 and does really well. He's the best left-handed reliever on the San Francisco Giants. So this shows the talent that's in Japan. And other teams are starting to say, all right, maybe we should start to go to Japan and sign some players. But what happens is when Mashi signs for San Francisco in 1965, the Nankai Hawks say, wait a minute, we still own the rights to him. We just loaned him. And the San Francisco Giants say, well, actually you didn't. Legally, we bought the rights for him to be allowed to pitch in the major league. So they have a big contract dispute. And what comes out of the contract dispute is a moratorium on bringing Japanese players to the United States, unless they are completely out of Japanese baseball. So Mashi opened the door and showed that there is talent in Japan that could be brought over to the States. But he also closed the door at the same time and kept the talent out because of this contract dispute for another 30 years. Brings us to Nomo, 1995. Nomo finds a loophole. His agent finds a loophole. He gets over to MLB and becomes, as everybody knows, we have Nomo mania, and he becomes a star. And it opens everybody's eyes again to how much talent there is in Japan, or at least the quality of some of the players in Japan. But there's major league stars over there playing. There's two things that also happened. I think I like to show that Nomo affected both the U.S. and Japan significantly. In the U.S., like I said, he opened up people's eyes, both fans and also people within baseball, about how strong Japanese baseball is. But in Japan, because Nomo's team games were televised, MLB's becomes televised in Japan for the first time frequently. You get a whole generation of young Japanese who start being familiar with MLB and start saying that is their goal in life. I want to become an MLB pitcher, not I just want to become a member of the Tokyo Gallery. So you start to see their goals change, and that's a big step towards the internationalization of baseball. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. And how does that then how do you make the jump to Ichiro, right?
Okay.
And because like from my perspective, and this is controversial, I know. I think Ichiro was the guy that if these other guys helped build a relationship between Japan and the United States, I think Ichiro shifted it, because I think in Bob Whiting's book he does a really good job of pointing out how he changed the perception in the United States, not just of Japanese baseball players, which he did, but also of Japan, and drawing a through line to the growth of anime and growth of Japanese restaurants and all these things, because Ichiro was the first guy to come over that was cool, and that most Americans could name. People couldn't name a Japanese player.
Right.
What do you think?
I'd like to jump back before I answer that question. May I?
Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead too quickly.
And I want to add my fifth player.
All
That's
right.
very important. And that's somebody who we don't think of that much, which is Hasegawa,
All right.
Shigetoshi Hasegawa, who's basically the second guy to come over to the MLB. And he's not a star. He is a good pitcher in Japan, but he's not a star. And he comes over and he shows that a regular Japanese player can become a regular MLB player.
Yeah.
And in a way, he might be more significant towards the internationalization of the game because now MLB teams are knowing we can go get that guy who's not a superstar and bring him right up to the AAA or minor or major league level. So I think he opened up the door a lot more than he's given credit for.
Good point.
But Ichiro culturally is a phenomenon. And yeah, what you said is absolutely true that he's really becomes more even a superstar than Noma, a true superstar where people start saying he's my favorite player. And so all of a sudden you have a Japanese player who's so popular that he's the favorite player of many American fans. And that does bring in cultural change. That does help bring countries closer together. And of course, he's the first battle to play in MLB. So he shows that Japanese don't just produce great pitchers, they can produce great position players. And on top of that, he's so talented with the fundamentals of the game. So he brings back the idea of speed and great defense and doing all those little things that people throughout the 90s, the beginning of the home run, kind of the emphasis on home runs, we're starting to get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he has a big effect on both the fans and also what happens in baseball as well.
And then very quickly, the Ohtani factor and what he's meant now, the effect in both places, in Japan and the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible because he's a superstar kind of unlike we've never seen before. He's probably the best player in the world. And he's Japanese. I mean, I don't think even 10 years ago people would have thought that would happen. He's also extraordinarily good looking, so he's got this charisma that a lot of baseball players don't have. So he's an international superstar the way only soccer players kind of have been before, or maybe boxers. So I think he's the whole package. And he just shows from a baseball talent point of view how great Japan can be, but also from a marketing point of view. Not forget that, how great a baseball player can be in the international scene and how much money can be made for professional sport.
Yeah, it's been pegged by somebody in Japan, one of the universities, at about $750 million for 2024 alone. And I think Michael Rubin from Fanatic said that his impact on MLB is similar to Jordan's impact in the NBA. So there's not much bigger than that. Aaron, I want to touch on your book and really your book focuses on kind of the opposite side of that coin. There's been a list of American players that have gone over to Japan. Some have done very well, some have not done very well. It is a huge culture shock. Tell us a little bit more about Tony and what made him want to go to Japan, and then what were some of the challenges that he had to stay there and then ultimately see his success that he got with the clip that you showed.
Say, I'm just trying to get organized here. Just starting off, honestly, this sounds not very idealistic or romantic, but money was the first factor that was drawing him in. Well, first I should start off, he didn't really know anything about the potential opportunity to go to Japan initially. So he was in AAA with the Reno Aces. It was actually after, I don't know if it was after his season or as it was winding down, a teammate of his named Bobby Korecki asked if he could pass along Tony's contact information to a Japanese agent. That agent ended up being the legendary Don Nomura, who famously brought over Hideo Nomo as the first player from Japan in over 30 years in the major leagues. But so Tony basically said, yeah, sure, why not? Didn't really take it seriously, didn't know anything about it, had almost no international travel experience up to that point, other than going to Canada or Mexico a few times as a kid for travel ball. But the opportunity progressed over that off season. Without going too much in detail, the Rule 5 draft that is designed to prevent MLB organizations from stockpiling talent, that came and went without the Arizona Diamondbacks, Tony's organization, protecting him. But at the same time, none of the other 29 organizations drafted him either. So it was a very clear signal that he wasn't that highly valued in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. And he used the term fill guy. If he came back, he would have probably been a non-roster invitee to their major league spring camp, and pretty much just been called up to the majors in the case of an injury to a pitcher. That was when pitchers hit in the National League, so pinch hitters were more important to have on your 25-man roster. So basically, this sounds crazy, but it's true. He went to Japan for more stability because he didn't want to be shuttling back and forth between AAA and the majors. He was also set to make a little over $20,000 that year. Seriously, a little over $20,000, and he was being offered $500,000. So when you put it like that, it's not that hard of a decision. But at the same time, in the back of his mind, he had to factor in, am I giving up my chance at a dream, going a lot farther away from where the bulk of the scouts are? Is it an out of sight, out of mind thing where you have to just perform incredibly well as a foreigner in Japan to even get the attention of a team stateside? And so there were all those concerns in his mind. There's so much more I want to say about what ended up happening when he went, but I think you might have just asked. I know we're doing a lot of follow-ups, so I'll just stop there.
No, what were some of the things the challenges that he had as a foreign player? You know, the food, the culture, the language, the baseball culture. Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's one thing I want to say first, and it's not really specific to Tony, but Rob and you were talking about this, and light bulb went off for me. The influence of Ichiro. So in 2004, Ichiro broke George Sisler's 84-year-old single-season hits mark. Those 257 hits in a season. When Ichiro did that, that really changed the game. So people in Japan saw how widely Ichiro Suzuki was embraced in the United States and North America, and that signaled to them back home to embrace foreigners. And it was kind of a process that was evolving and already happening with Nomo and Hideki Matsui, but Ichiro really solidified it. And where that connects directly more with Tony and what's referenced in my book, in addition to that, is Vladimir Valentin, Tony Barnett's teammate, broke Sadaharu Oh's hallowed single-season home run mark of 55 home runs. And there's a whole chapter in the book about it. It was a thing where Sadaharu Oh himself, even though his father was Chinese, he was born and raised in Japan, and he's a living legend, still around to this day, 86 years old. But his record was so widely celebrated that Sadaharu Oh, when he was managing teams, he would direct his pitchers to pitch around foreigners. This started with Randy Bass in the 80s. Randy Bass joked about it on David Letterman that off season that they would revoke his visa if he broke O's record. And so Bass ended up falling one home run short, and he just saw no good pitches to hit near the end of that season. Alex Cabrera and Tuffy Rhodes ended up tying Sadaharu Oh's mark of 55 home runs. And again, they had the misfortune of facing a team managed by Oh himself. And even though O said publicly that he didn't do anything, it was well documented that he told his pitchers to pitch around those guys or walk them every time they came up to the plate. And so they were not able to break O's record. They just tied it. And then by the time, and that was in 2001 and 2002, Ichiro comes around in 2004, breaks that mark that George Sisler held since 1920, just embraced wholeheartedly by the North American fans and fans in Seattle and every other visiting city. And then by the time Ballantyne's about to shatter O's record, in visiting ballparks, even Tony Barnett, the primary subject of my book, told me that visiting fans were booing their own pitchers for pitching away from Ballantine and walking him and not giving him good pitches to hit. So the fans were kind of ahead of the curve, ahead of the coaches and the pitchers a little bit. But long story short, Vladimir Ballantine, and I know this has diverted way away from Tony, but it's all relevant. So Vladimir Ballantine ended up just being so dominant that season that there was really no realistic way that they could avoid him breaking O's record. He ended up finishing with 60 home runs, 130 RBIs, almost won the Triple Crown. But it was easier for foreigners by then. And so Tony always throughout the process told me that his teammates and fans and people in Tokyo, when they would see him around, they were really kind and supportive. He had an interpreter, Go Fujisawa, whom he became really close with throughout the process. And those types of things made his transition culturally off the field a lot easier. But there's still naturally a lot of those things with a language barrier, a culture barrier, going to the supermarket, not knowing exactly what things are, but not wanting to bother your interpreter. Who's available to you around the clock, but he has a family and you don't necessarily want to impose. So Tony had a lot of those issues off the field. And then on the field, I'll just say quickly, there's a thing with a Gaijin strike zone where historically for hitters, it's larger and for pitchers, it's smaller. So basically, it's just a lot harder as a foreigner. And I don't know, and Rob can probably speak more to that if we have time at some point, but I'm sure it's changing gradually, but maybe it's still subconsciously a thing a little bit, or maybe it's not, but where if you're a foreigner, it's a little harder to throw a strike according to the umpire, or if you're a batter, it's a little bit more likely that it will be a strike if it's out of the zone, if that makes sense.
Well, I think they're hopefully that'll get changed soon. I think NPB is going to bring the automated balls and strikes pretty soon.
Hopefully, we still have umpires.
Yeah. So great, Aaron. Thank you very much. I mentioned that there were going to be 3 segments. The second segment that I wanted to touch on briefly is about baseball as a change agent, and it's fitting that we're you guys are all in LA tonight with the Dodgers and. Their history in being a change agent, right? With Jackie Robinson and then, bringing over Valenzuela and Nomo and Chan-Ho Park. And, baseball can be a source of positive change for societies. Yuriko, there was a really cool moment in your film of the 1949 San Francisco Seals tour of Japan. And Alcine said it's right after the war. Lefty O'Doul and Kathy Harada and MacArthur kind of conspired to bring this team of minor leaguers over to play on a goodwill tour, and it was wildly successful. Hundreds of thousands of people going to the games. They played in they played a special game for all the orphans of the war. And, at this point, much of Japan is still in rubble, in 1949. But there was a moment, I think it was in Osaka, but I might be wrong, wherever it was, when Cap Harada got permission from MacArthur to put up the flags of both teams and play Kimigayo and the Star Spangled Banner. Tell us about that moment. And there's a beautiful piece of the film that touches, with Tetsu, who you interviewed. But tell us about the significance of that and the significance of it for Tets.
Well, so I think they did it at the opening game in several places, but it was probably the first opening game that was the most significant one because it was still during the occupation. And the idea that the American flag and the Japanese flag would go up together, the idea that the Japanese flag would go up was completely not thought of because they were the defeated country. So it was an idea that they decided, okay, this is the goodwill tour. So it was going to be important to reestablish friendship. So there was permission to send both flags up, play both national anthems, and Cabby even saluted the Japanese flag as it went up. And apparently one of the other generals got very upset and said, well, he should be court-martialed because this is not right. But what Tut gets remembers, and he attended the game as a child. So it's a very significant memory for him. I think he was about 9 years old when he went to this game. He got to go to a game, which was wonderful. And, he got to watch this moment when the two flags went up. And he remembers that he felt teary. He felt himself sort of tear up because there was a moment when he just suddenly went, oh, the war is really over. And I think that was true for a lot of people in Japan because they realized that the baseball team had come, which was all fun and exciting, and they loved baseball, and they were starting it back up and all that. But the idea that the two teams would be on the field together and the two flags would go up really meant that the war was over. And they took it to heart.
Yep. Really, really special. Aaron, so, you touch on the book of what those of us that were there at the time called 3/11, which is the triple disaster in Japan in March of 2011. And it impacted everybody that was there, impacted my family, but unfortunately impacted the entire Tohoku region and tens of thousands of people who lost their lives. Tony was there at that time. We'll talk a little bit about the role that baseball played in helping people heal in Japan after that tragedy.
The period, and it's interesting that it's now about 25 years and 5 months since that happened. Sorry, 15. 15, sorry. 15. Yeah, it's been over 15 years now. That's pretty crazy. But so Tony and his team were playing an exhibition game in Yokohama. So they weren't directly affected. It just took them a long time to get back to Tokyo. But that was why it was really important for me to write about the book and devote a couple of chapters to it, because baseball, among other things, brought people together. Just more broadly, though, how beautifully the country came together in the face of that utter devastation and tragedy was important for me to chronicle and note. A lot more important than baseball just in a vacuum, but baseball as a vehicle for bringing people together, I think, is crucial. And so I'll just rattle off some bullet points, and then if there's time, I can elaborate later. But the popular high school tournament, Senbatsu, or the spring version of Koshien, there's one in the spring and one in the summer. That's bigger than NPB in a lot of ways, as Rob documents in his book, and it's huge there. Millions tuned in to the national NHK broadcasts, and that proceeded as normal after the earthquake and tsunami. I don't have the date on the tip of my fingertips, but it's at my fingertips. But it was right very shortly after 3/11, and so that ended up happening. They outlawed cheering and brass bands. But still, it happened, and it inspired the nation. it was a return to normalcy, even though everything was very much not normal. That earthquake and tsunami happened on a Friday, so nothing happened over the weekend. But then the two biggest teams, the Hanshin Tigers and Yomiuri Giants, they drew capacity crowds at exhibition games on a Monday, which is pretty rare. And they passed around donation boxes, and all the proceeds went to disaster relief. This isn't specifically baseball, but I think it's important to note that non-governmental organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, and individual volunteers spearheaded relief efforts. There were volunteer firefighters that were heroic, risking their own lives to help people. Public health nurses going above and beyond. Pensioners over 60 years old volunteered to go into the Fukushima plant in place of younger workers who would have had to deal with the devastations of radiation for decades and decades. And the government didn't take them up on that offer. But I just think it's important to talk about everyday people who are volunteering and just doing brave, important things. Getting back to baseball, there was a private-public initiative, a partnership called Tomodachi, and I know Jim, you know a lot about that. They so the U.S.-Japan Council partnered with MLB and the MLB Players Association to restore and reopen damaged fields in the Tohoku region, and so. They were doing that. They were working with corporations globally to raise funds. Then they would bring current and legendary retired players over to bring hope, or do camps for kids, or reopen ballparks that were fixed and renovated. Like Curtis Granderson, for instance, he was one player who did that. Hal Ripken Jr., Hall of Fame shortstop, third baseman. He taught camps for kids. Then there were, of course, high-profile player and team donations. Ichiro, Yu Darvish, Alex Ramirez. They were all donating hundreds of thousands of dollars or upwards of $1 million to relief efforts, and not just donating money, donating supplies.
Just to jump in there, that it is something that I think baseball and Major League Baseball and NPB should take a lot of promise in, that they were able to come together and do that. I was very fortunate to start Tomodachi with. I was asked by John Bruce, who was the ambassador at the time, for our assistance, and so you're right. We built a baseball field in Ichinomaki that was basically about 3 miles from where most of the devastation happened, and we tried to do a lot to bring attention to that over the coming years. Not just we brought the Mariners and the A's to play in Tokyo a year later. Some people didn't want to come. Some people were worried about it because of the the after effects of the radiation and whatnot. But we knew that baseball was part of the healing process, and the role that baseball plays in society as well. Mashi, or I'm sorry, Rob.
Can I just add a few more things? Sorry.
Sure.
Just winding down, it's always a balance, like what we saw here after 9/11. How soon do you return? What is the adequate amount of time for honoring the lives lost, the people who are displaced, who are in temporary shelters and all that? So I don't want to gloss over that it was just so easy to return to baseball and that it provided a positive distraction or a return to normalcy. And that's a lot longer of a conversation that I touch upon in the book. Rob has it in his book as well, from the perspective of the commissioner at the time, which is a very different perspective than the one I present. But it was kind of a little bit of a tug of war between the commissioner, as arguably represented by the owners of the Yomiuri Giants and the Hanshin Tigers, and then the NPB Players Association that wanted to delay more. And it wasn't such a cut and dry, easy, black and white thing. Well, let's just return or let's not. because there were rolling blackouts, so they had to conserve electricity. 2 NPB stadiums were damaged. And they couldn't play because of the rolling blackouts and energy conservation. They couldn't play at night in certain regions. So they ended up delaying it for a couple weeks. They had certain rules for time limits on games and different things. They ended up getting around it or getting through it, and it provided a lot of hope. But there were challenges involved. And then April 29th, which was about 2.5 weeks after the April 12th date that they ended up returning, which was a 2-week delay of the regular schedule. That was when they returned to Sendai, and that was the Rakuten Golden Eagles. They hosted, and it was their stadium that was severely damaged. So that was extremely inspiring to the people in the Sendai region and just in the nation that we're going to proceed with this thing that we love so much as a nation, despite the challenges. But it wasn't easy at all, and they ended up doing it. And also, sorry, this is the last thing, Jim, I promise. The Women's World Cup team ended up winning it all. The Japanese Women's World Cup team in July, 4 months.
Soccer.
Yeah, soccer. Exactly. It's soccer. And later in the Q&A or something, I can talk about that. That's mentioned in the book. But that team, Nadeshiko, which means beautiful flower, they ended up upsetting the Americans in the final. And that, again, inspired the nation. So another example of sports, bringing people together and inspiring a grieving, struggling nation.
Rob, talk very quickly, because we don't have a ton of time left, about Mashi and the stuff that he handled when he was coming over. Because, again, it was only less than 20 years after the end of World War II.
Absolutely. So when Mashi comes to the major leagues, as you said, it was very close to the end of World War II, and there's still a lot of hostility among certain sections of the American public. But Mashi he was and still is such a likable guy. Always greets you with a big smile and a joke. And he instantly won over his teammates and the management of the Giants, both in the minor leagues and in the major leagues. And he soon won over the fans. And when you go through the old newspapers back in '64, he is on almost every day. There's Mashi on the sports page. And either jokes about him, which in San Francisco were very good-natured, and things that he said and things that he did. He was really a celebrity, and I think he helped build up the image of Japanese people not being the enemy, of being friendly and being somebody you could relate to. He also had a big effect on the Japanese American community because, of course, Japanese Americans were incarcerated during World War II. And then when they came back to California and back to their homes, there was a lot of hostility. And Mashi became a real hero for them, somebody who could play the national pastime with the American players as an equal, somebody who stood up for himself on the ball field. There's a couple examples of Mashi arguing with umpires and just being kind of a strong presence out there that was really seen as a symbol for Japanese Americans of just a strong person, a strong Japanese person.
Right, and bringing that relationship tighter.
Yes. Can I just throw in one little thing on that?
Sure.
I think it was also the first time that Japanese Americans got to see a Major League Baseball player with a face like theirs, and in this similar kind of way that Jackie Robinson kind of shifted the perspective for the Black American population. He raised, I don't know, I think he raised the hopes of a lot of young Japanese American children, and probably also other Asian faces and communities.
Really good point, Jericho. And I've heard the same thing told about with Ichiro and now Ohtani, and especially Ohtani being, throwing balls 100 miles an hour and hitting balls 120 miles an hour, right? And the pride that not just the Japanese community, but the Asian community takes on that. So, Michael, we haven't talked to you for a while. Let's get back to you. You and I have a mutual friend named Jan Bagen, and he was one of these early baseball players in the '80s when it was still Czechoslovakia. Talk a little bit about him and about some of the things that you learned, and then the greater how baseball kind of changed or the role baseball played in the emergence of a free and open society in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, absolutely. And the lights just turned off around me. If you're wondering why, it's constant shadows now. So in a minute,
You
I'll
still
pop
look
up.
great, Michael.
Thank you. So I mentioned earlier that in Czechoslovakia, baseball was allowed to be played, but it wasn't really supported. By the late 70s, the USSR government gave Jan and his team, his brother Daniel as well. So now they're known as Eagles Praha. It's the first field that was built there. That's the field that Jim and MLB helped build. But in the 70s was the first time they were allowed to leave the country and play baseball. This was not a national team. They were not allowed in the Confederation of European Baseball. This was a club team mix of baseball and softball that hopped on a bus and were allowed to leave the nation and play in France, Netherlands, Germany. And they had a couple of games. And, what they did is they brought canned foods, bread. They either slept on the bus, they slept in tents, or they asked the teams that they were playing, could we sleep in your locker rooms? That was where that was essentially that was the traveling. This was not fancy. They did not have money. What they did do though is they went on the black market and bought French francs and guilders. Before there was the euro, they had to go out and buy the different money they would need, and they hid it inside their baseball gloves. They would take their baseball gloves, and in between the padding and the inside of the glove, they would slip the money in there and put it in the bottom of their bags, so that when they were traveling, if they were stopped at checkpoints by Russian police, nobody would know that they were smuggling money out. And what they did with that is they used it to buy baseball equipment, American-made baseball equipment. They then made sure to use it and bring it back so that and get it dented up so nobody would say, "What are you doing with this brand new equipment?" There's a couple funny stories from Jan though that no one would really know they were bringing it back. He once mailed a letter to the Easton Bat Company requesting equipment. They sent 3 bats. He was asked to come down to the customs office to pick it up, and they said, "What kind of table has 3 legs?" They had no idea that those were baseball bats. He also once went to a sporting goods store in Prague that had just got a shipment of Batos, that's a Cuban company, Batos baseball gloves. And he said, "Where are the baseball gloves?" And they said, "We're waiting to put them out. They made a mistake. They sent us way too many left-handed gloves. They only sent us a couple right-handed gloves. We're waiting for the pairs to come in." And he had to explain to them that's not how baseball works. You only wear one at a time. But those were the first trips that those players ever had outside of the Iron Curtain. And Jan said that was when we knew that what we were being told in the news was not true. That the depiction of Western culture, that the Western European nations, the way they're depicted inside of what was then communist Czechoslovakia, was not accurate. It was those first games. And on one of those trips at the very end, they're invited to play one more game. They said, "You want to play one more game? Follow us." They get in the bus. They go. It's in Germany, and it's in Mannheim. The bus, they end up going onto a U.S. Army base. They play a game on a U.S. Army base in Mannheim, Germany. Jan said that he could see missiles, in the background being moved around. They get back home. A couple months later, their manager is called in. And in his report of the trip, he does not mention the Mannheim Army base game. But the secret police knew. And they ask him about the trip. Did anything happen outside of the report? He says, no, it's as it's written. And they go, well, what about this game in Mannheim? And the manager was removed from the team. They were barred from leaving the country for a few years. And they don't know who it was that revealed it. They think it was the bus driver, because the bus drivers were allowed to leave the nation. They were often part of the secret police. But that's if you want to know what to be a baseball player in 1970s, early 80s Czechoslovakia, that's what baseball was, where you literally are, you're essentially a spy. You're smuggling out money. After Velvet Revolution 1989, after the fall of USSR, that is when American coaches start coming in. And as we've seen time and time again, it is baseball that helps connect these nations. It is what Czechoslovakia, uses as they become the Czech Republic. And in many ways, it's part of their westernization, which we see, 1860s, 1870s, Cuba was playing baseball and Spain outlawed it because that's how the Cubans were raising funds to have their revolution. Or even the way the Taiwanese connected to what was then the Japanese colonizers. They took up baseball, the Cano team in 1930, and that's a great documentary and story. But baseball, and we see sports, it is what, brings these nations together, and we really see that in Czech Republic.
Yeah, really good. Jan told me one other really quick story. He was a passenger in a car. They got pulled over by the cops. They were going to play baseball. And the cop said, or the guy said, "Why'd you pull me over?" And he said, "Your taillight's broken." And he goes, "No, it's not." And cracked it and said, "Now it is." So it's like the Walking Tall Buford Pusser movie. And he got arrested, right? They would just do stuff to harass him. And we think about like being able to go out and play baseball whenever we want, and these guys literally had to, as Jan said, we had to play the games of mouse and cat to get away from these guys, to get to the field to go play baseball, right? We're so lucky, and it really kind of, increases my love and respect of those guys. So we're almost out of time in the main part of the conversation. So we have about 9 minutes left, and we want to make sure that we have time for questions. So the segment 3 is the future of international baseball, and I'm going to start, Michael. Your voice is all warmed up, so I'm going to start with you. The success story of the 23 WBC was so cool and so great. Didn't work out as great in 26, right? They got relegated. They're not in the next WBC. What does that mean for them? And what does it mean for baseball in general, particularly in Europe? What is the future of baseball in Europe based on the success of the WBC? And then what are the plans for Czechia to get back in to the World Baseball Classic?
Yeah, it's really interesting. People look at their performance and they say, well, it was a worse performance. Well, yes and no. No team took them for granted this time. Everybody was ready. Also, Chinese Taipei, the number 2 or 3 WBSC ranked team in the world, coming off the 2024 Premier 12 victory, essentially replaced China in the pool.
Yeah.
China, who I think, throughout WBC history was outscored like 115 to 30 or 20, something like that. So already, the team the Czechs beat are different. But, their relegation obviously is a big deal. But they have set records now when they hosted the 2023 Euros for the largest attendance in Euro baseball history. And manager Pavel Hadim, the neurologist, who actually took Jan Bagen's center field job on the national team when he came up as a teenager in the late 80s, he wore their European bronze medal that they won in September. So March was WBC, last September was the Euros. That's the first time the Czechs have won a medal in a European baseball competition. And he wore it because he wanted to say, we are not tourists. We are not here because it's a good, fun time and we're here to eat Japanese food and play a little baseball. We are now a respected force in Europe. And, we saw from Italy's performance, they made it to the semifinals. Yes, it was a team largely of Americans with Italian descent. However, it made a huge impact at home. We saw newspaper headlines talking about the Italian performance. People in Italian parliament were talking about baseball. And actually, I just spoke yesterday to Giacomo Toscan and Giaconino La Saracina for the Dunedin Blue Jays. They are considered, we can't prove it because there's so much baseball history, but we believe it is the first all-Italian developed battery in baseball history.
Yeah.
Germany's system, they just had 2 or 3 players sign some contracts. Their youth program is growing. The Netherlands is actually interesting because baseball participation is growing everywhere except in Holland. But because they're the Kingdom of the Netherlands, they can call upon Curacao, Aruba, Dutch Antilles, and they are still the force in European baseball. Spain is getting better. All of these nations are getting better. Baseball is definitely growing in Europe, and they are all looking to the Czechs because the Czechs built a system of Czech baseball largely run by Czechs, and now they have these development systems in place with Japan. The Samurai Japan team has hosted them for games, as has the Korean national team, as has the Chinese Taipei team, all for either prep for Premier 12 or the WBC. So these are not charity games. They've sent their college teams to Prague Baseball Week and to Harlem Honkball Week. That honkball is the word, Dutch word for baseball. It's the first time those types of nations have come to Europe. So largely, Asian nations are looking to European baseball as a place to develop the game, to grow the game, but also there's this great partnership happening, and it's largely spearheaded by what the Czechs have done.
Yeah, very good. For Rob, for NPB, what do you think of the future of NPB? Where is it now? Where can it go? And what is the impact? Can it continue to thrive if its best players, quote unquote, are going and playing in Major League Baseball?
Well, I think the future of NPB is very bright. What we see in NPB is, despite many stars coming over to Major League, from 70 stars since Nomo that came over, we see every year they break attendance records. Every year their teams are doing better financially. So their domestic game is actually growing. And when I talk to people who are in MPB, like front office types and league official types, what they say is when you get a player doing well on the international stage, when you get Samurai Japan doing well at NPB, when you see Ohtani doing well with the Dodgers, because of national pride, it brings more Japanese coming in to watch Japanese baseball. They may also watch Dodger baseball, but they're watching Japanese baseball, more of them than ever before. So I think you have a thriving baseball league economically, which means you'll always have players who fill up the ranks and bring fans in. What happens in the future, we'll have to see, but there is a chance that Japan will build up even more. They reduce their limitations on foreigners and get the teams to be even stronger. We may see even more international baseball. And Jim, we can argue or discuss all day long about how World Baseball Classic is going to hold back international baseball because we will not have an international World Series until.
Well, let's talk about that. That's a great segue, and we'll have this last one, and then let's hear what our audience thinks about this stuff as well. So, what do you? And this is for anybody. Just raise your hand. Do you think there will ever be, or should ever be, a real World Series? So, MLB champion versus an NPB champion, and then what do you do about the KBO? And what do you do about Chinese Taipei? But we'll start with that. Anybody have a prediction if there will ever be a real World Series?
I'll throw out mine, and then I know the rest of you will all chime in. Yes, someday, but not until MLB is not focusing on the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
As long as the World Baseball Classic is MLB's moneymaker and their darling, there will be no interest in a international World Series. Once the international fan base grows so much that more money can be added on by having international playoffs, then we'll see it. And I think that'll be down the road a while.
Anybody else want to throw? I have an opinion on it, which I will share. But I want to
technically, to have like a true World Series, you would have to have like the Hawks or the Giants come in and be playing one of the other teams, like playing the Red Sox or playing the Giants here or whatever, right? So
Yeah,
I mean, I know Bobby Valentine has said that they will never be one because, it isn't set up that way. But
look, I'll say it now. It's like the challenge of this is twofold, right? I think that Rob is right. I think there is concern from Major League Baseball standpoint um, on why do it, right? What is the benefit for the league to do it? But I think the biggest thing, honestly, is when do you do it? Like, it's just not practical right now. You see how every MLB team is that wins the World Series, right? Those guys have been playing since February, and their bodies are broken down. We have a hard time. Oh, I'm sorry. When I was at MLB, we had a hard time getting them to go on All-Star Series, and so which is postseason tours of Japan. So because everybody's hurt. If you're a Major League Baseball player and you make it to the World Series, your body is not in good shape, right? Okay, well then you do them the next spring. You have it the next spring. Okay, you can do that, but look at the turnover that everybody has every year. So is that really a representation of the team that won? So it's just different, and I think those things need to be worked out as well. So if you can work those things out, if you can make it, to Rob's point, beneficial for everybody in baseball, if you can work out a time of year that it's legitimate, then maybe you can do it.
Member who I think has input on that or has a related question.
Yeah,
is that okay to bring him in?
We're ready to start with the Q&A. So Jacob, I think you're the one that raised your hand.
I'm clicking ask on. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to respond to
or the Czech Republic hat too.
Yes, I would say I'm friends with Michael. I read his book. He graciously provided me a copy of all of his bookmarks upon request. It was a really great book, but I just wanted to respond or give my 2 cents on if there'd be like a true World Series. Michael knows this, but like WBSC Europe does a baseball Champions League in Europe, which is they take like the best teams from each European league and they have a little like tournament with them. So there's some precedent to do it, but like as you said, I think it would be hard to get all those major leagues, I guess, like MPB, KBO, MLB on the same page and find a good time to do it. And I mean, like we already saw with the WBC this year, like insurance was like a significant issue for like the premier event. Like once you are talking about something that I guess would be essentially an exhibition like tournament, like I feel like it'd be hard to get players on board with that. Maybe.
I think you're right, Jacob. I think insurance is an issue. I also think that like this MLB is not alone in their concern on this stuff. There's not like the Club World Championship that FIFA tried to run had a lot of issues and a lot of problems, right? Because of just the stuff that you talked about, insurance, players getting hurt. When do you do it? When do you take away from how do you take away from national team competitions, right? Champions League and which is not a national competition, but other competitions around the world. So it's not an easy thing to do. And I think, I'll put on my WBC hat, I think the WBC has a long runway to grow. And I think that is probably for everybody. I personally think that's the best focal point, right? To have, if the Dodgers win again this year and they play SoftBank or whoever wins, in Japan, is that going to propel baseball in Europe? Is it going to propel baseball in Brazil, in India? No, not. And so the WBC does that, right? That's exactly what it was designed to do. So I just don't see the upside in it, but I'm not making those decisions.
And I'll just quickly add on.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Those Champions Leagues are having a hard time being run as is.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, Netherlands and Italy dropped out of European Champions League. We've got BCL Americas, which brought in a Taiwan CPBL team, but it was their farm team because they didn't think it was financially viable or make sense to send the top team. So I think one day it'll happen. I don't know if I'm going to be around to see it, though.
And Sanjay, yes, we won't sleep on the Hanshin Tigers.
Interrupt this conversation. So if there's anyone who still wanted to opine or ask about this particular thing, then I'll step aside for a second. But I did want to note that Horace Stoneham's granddaughter was here at the event at the LA Public Library, and where he comes in the story is he was the president and the principal owner of the San Francisco Giants when Nori Murakami pitched for them in the 60s, which was a focus of one of Rob's books, was featured heavily in Yuriko's excellent documentary mentioned in my book. And he was the first person and last before Nomo, the last before Nomo to come over, Murakami, that is. So I thought that was really cool and special to have her here. And I think it also just speaks to the wonderful melding of all of our projects. I read both Rob's book and Michael's, both really good in their own way, very different from each other and mine. I love the culture-heavy books. Mike's, a lot of culture in there and stuff about the Cold War. I had a professor in Davis named Ethan Shiner who, at the risk of bringing up another book, wrote an excellent book on hockey in the Czech Republic during the Cold War, called Freedom to Win, which I recommend too. But just inspiring, given all that was up against those players in the early days of Czech baseball, up until the modern day, where they still have a lot of hurdles that they've had to overcome, and they've been able to excel on a global level. And then Rob's book, just tremendous, bringing us to the current day and time. Because my book, I'm biased, but as good as I think it is, it's about 10 years out of date. Tony's last season in Japan was 2015. So everything is not 10 years old, but the NPB aspect particularly, that Rob did an excellent job shining a light on, where I think he included 25 or 26 interviews of people all across the spectrum. There were general managers, people in branding and marketing, a beer girl, a cheerleader, a general manager, a commissioner, etc. The list goes on and on, an umpire. And so and each chapter is from a different person's perspective. And he did all those interviews and edited them and condensed them to go into that book. And again, like I said, Yuriko's documentary, if you can watch it, it's incredible.
Any other questions for anyone in our crew? Jacob?
But Jake, we'll go to Jacob first, if you have something, Jacob.
Yeah, I was gonna just send this one to Michael Clair. Since we last really talked properly, I know I send you a bunch of reels on Instagram about international baseball, but the Yankees signed or agreed to terms with Jan Novak. I guess we're Jan Novak the younger, I suppose. But in your mind, what do you think Czechia's outlook looks like for the Premier 12 qualification later this year in that little pool? And what are your thoughts on some of their youth talent?
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. Yeah, so this is the funny thing about the Czech story is, for all of their national team success, this has actually been a fallow period for Czech players in the minor leagues. So Jan Novak, there's honestly, arguably their top pitcher right now was in the Orioles system about a decade ago, also named Jan Novak, also a left-hander, but the Yankees just signed a left-handed Jan Novak. What we're really seeing from this team is the core that got them on the world stage, got them to World Baseball Classic qualifiers, got them to the World Baseball Classic, is starting to age out. This is Pavel Hadim's last cycle. If they qualify, he's going to stick around. If they don't, he's going to retire. As we talked about earlier, the consolidation of the minors is a concern for getting players into systems, but what the Czechs have a leg up on is the fact that they form these relationships with Japan, with Korea, with Taiwan. Marek Klub made a 5 at-bat debut for the Tokyo Giants, played briefly in Mexico this summer. So I am still very bullish on them. They are in a very difficult pool. They've got a Nicaragua they're going up against. That's the national sport, is baseball. China is there, which is obviously growing, has millions of players, and Jim was a huge part in that development. And they also have Great Britain, which, will have a lot of quote-unquote passport players with them. So it's a tough pool. I think they've got a chance, but we know how baseball is in a short series. I think the long-term outlook is really positive, is assuming that they can get players to American universities, to development centers in Japan, in Taiwan, and that looks like the goal. But one of the things we talk about is technology and how it levels the playing field in some ways. But at the same time, you need the money to pay for all that. Taiwan's pitching program is basically an American-style tread, drive-line pitching program, and they have the money to fund it. Czech Republic has one hit tracks that cost $25,000. So they don't have pitching labs, Netherlands does have one pitching lab. So while there's this new technology, Rapsodo and all that, you also need the money, and where the Czechs are doing great is they have a lot of sponsors on board, but you have to win to get sponsors. Now that they're out of the WBC, they need to look good in the qualifiers, and they need to honestly, do what they can to get back whenever that next qualifier will be, which we have to wait for the CBA. So I'm excited. I'm bullish for the sport across Europe, but there are a lot of reasons to also be concerned about what it's going to take to get to that next level.
Hey, Aaron, is there anyone in the audience that wants to ask a question?
One question. My dad, Joel.
I know we took a couple off the that are on the Zoom, but if there's anyone in person that wanted to ask.
Be able to hear if we want to move the microphone.
Hello?
Basically, I just wanted to add to the discussion about it.
Aaron, I'm sorry. Do you have someone lined up, or should we take someone from the Zoom?
To the World Series, to the discussion about it. World Series. To a true rules. Can they hear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Just wanted to add to the discussion whether or not there's a true World Series. And next year, the two years from now, the Olympics is in 2028. And they're selling tickets to Dodger Stadium and all these events. And it's not even that popular now. The Olympics has pretty much discontinued baseball and softball for women. So the World Baseball Classic is definitely the popularity. And I'm not sure it's even going to survive in the Olympics in future years. It might not even be an event after the 2028 Olympics.
Yeah, so Olympic baseball is important. Baseball's been kind of out of the Olympics or on the out since the early 2000s, right? The 2008 was the last time that it was fully in the Olympics in Beijing. It came back in as it was allowed to be brought in as a local choice in Tokyo and in Los Angeles. There's questions about whether it'll be in Brisbane in 32. But that's one of the reasons why MLB was prodded to start the WBC, because they knew that they needed to lead into something else. So again, I think the point is, to me, national team versus national team is much more compelling and much more of an efficient way to spend resources, as opposed to let's be clear, wouldn't be a real World Series. It would be a global club championship, because you'd have to find a way to have Korea and other teams playing it, in my opinion. I think Marshall and Adam had their hands up. Do you want to, Aaron, can you unmute them, or how does that work?
Start with you.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So my bias, probably shared by everyone here, is that I think the world needs baseball. And if we can imagine it's the year 2099 and we just finished another World Baseball Classic and it was bigger than the World Cup for soccer. My question for anyone really is, what steps would we have needed to take from now until those next 75 years to get there where baseball's number one?
I can jump in quickly. We need to build more fields and make it less expensive. Part of soccer's success is you need a round object, and you can honestly make 2 goals just by saying that tree over there and that rock and kick it in between there. One of the biggest issues is baseball equipment is expensive, and baseball fields are specialized. One of the biggest issues, in my opinion, with the growth of the game in England is that they have leagues and they have teams and they care, but other than one field at Farnham Park near Slough, which is where the original office is set, which it's not supposed to be like a really cool happening place, that's the best baseball field in England. So we need fields, we need players, and we need to find a way to make it inexpensive. That's where Baseball 5 comes in. One of my concerns with Baseball 5, though, I think it's a lot of fun. It has elements of baseball, but the baseball we know, it is a pitcher-batter sport, and Baseball 5 removes the pitcher-batter element. So I love your dream, Adam. I agree with you, but for me, for baseball to supersede soccer, we got to make it affordable for every kid, every person out there who wants to be able to do it. Because at its core, hit a round object with a stick is like one of the most basic things humans like to do. Any kid loves to do it. So that's my answer.
For joining and for your question.
Adam, one quick thing. You need to moderate this next panel. That was really good. You did it better than I could have. And just to add one thing to Michael Clair's point is that's true. I also think that the growth, and I have some inside baseball information on this, the growth of the WBC is limited until it really kind of develops a more broad appeal in terms of women's. I think there needs to be a World Softball Classic. I think there needs to be a youth version of the World Baseball Classic. Everything that FIFA did and does, and now rugby does with women's versions, with youth versions, creates a wider vision, right? It gets more people under the tent, and I think baseball has to do that, and they have a plan to do it because they gave it to them on May 1st when I left.
Say Eric Vickery, I'm not sure if he's still in the room. He sent us a question for Michael. I'll read that in a second, but first I want to go over to Marshall, who has a question for me.
Thank you. Hey, a great presentation by everyone all around. Aaron, great to see you again. My question is for Aaron specifically. What challenge, if any, did you encounter? What was the biggest challenge you encountered in pulling together the narrative for A Baseball Gaijin, and how did you overcome that hurdle?
You read the book, so I'm sure you can appreciate just the volume of information that I included, all the details. It's just so much stuff felt interesting to me, but I didn't want it to read like an information dump. I wanted it to be ordered and structured in a way that actually made sense. And there was a driving force to the narrative, that it wasn't just this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So it's not strictly chronological, it largely is. But there are definitely strategic flashbacks and things like that to just make it more interesting and more of a cohesive narrative. But how did I overcome that? It was really tough, but trial and error, writing, rewriting, outlining, asking input from other people, sometimes as stubborn as I am, or as much as I know the material more than anyone else. It's important to broaden your horizons, ask other people, lean on other people's expertise. So those are some of the strategies I employed, but yeah, it's kind of hard to distill everything that I did into one succinct answer, but that was basically what I did. Thanks for joining us and for your question. So I'm not sure if you saw, Mike, but Eric Vickery asked in the chat if you could expand on how baseball is growing in Europe. Are there teams at most high schools and colleges? And what kinds of salaries do players earn in European leagues?
Yeah, so great question. So baseball in Europe is not like here in the States. It's more like European soccer. So if there's baseball played in high schools and colleges, it's largely as a club sport. If you play baseball, there is obviously Little League, but you tend to join your local ball club's academy. So if you're in Brno, let's say, you join Dratzy Brno under 8s, and then you move up to under 10s and under 12s. Or, you do the same in the Netherlands with Amsterdam Pirates or something like that. That is one of the problems, though, is money. There's not a lot of money. In the 70s, most teams in the Netherlands had sponsors and were paying most players. Nowadays, only Amsterdam Pirates and Curaçao Neptunus. Curaçao Neptunus is sponsored by the Curaçao Tourism Board. So it's largely a two-team league now. So most of the guys who get money are imports. They are the Americans or Venezuelans or Dominican players who are going over and playing in Europe. That is changing a little bit. The Czechs have moved up into the top tier, I would say, of league play. The Honkbal Hoofdklasse, that's the league in the Netherlands, pays the import players. Italy's top teams pay import players. Dratzy Brno has gone full professional and pays everyone, but it is not really a living salary. Maybe if you're a student and living at home or something like that. But that is a step that they have enough sponsors. They have enough support from the governments as well. That's a big thing. The Brno government supports baseball because it helps Brno stand out. The Prague government does not really give much money to the Prague teams because they're like, we're Prague. People are coming here. Baseball's the 80th thing on our list to stand out. So baseball is growing, and the WBC is a big part of that. The German league rebranded last year and they've tried to upgrade their streams. Players are still heading over there, but it's its own world right now. When the Czechs set the record for the highest attendance for the Euros in 2023, it was what an average Baltimore or Orioles attendance is on like a Wednesday night. It was like 23,000 people. So that sort of just puts the numbers in the something you can kind of understand a little bit. So baseball's everywhere and it's growing, but still a long way from Asia, Central America, Latin America.
Anyone else have a question?
Touch on if no one has a question right now. I don't see anyone in person.
Mike Wilson raised his hand. I
Oh.
don't know if that was on.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. With the reduction in the minor leagues in the U.S. from 170, 180 teams to about 120, more or less, and the influx of international players slowly but surely, we've seen, like the kid who was out at Stanford, and some guys at Michigan. I'm told that we see more international scouts, for example, from the KBO, coming to look at U.S. colleges. How does this all play out? I'm curious if the panelists have any view on, U.S. college baseball perhaps becoming a bit of a surrogate minor leagues, and does the MLB and KBO and NPB support them more in the future, or any thoughts on that by the panel?
I'll take a first crack at that, Mike. That's a great question, and it's I think that it's a challenge because unless and until the other leagues open up for more foreign players and open up a true minor league system, there's just not a lot of places for those kids to go. I would say this, that I'm advising the new pro league in China now, and that's part of the my document I'm giving them is to do just that, is to go get kids that either a kid, a D1 college player who would have otherwise played professional baseball in the U.S., because there's a lot of them that are going to be available, or that what you just described affects a AAA player that got released, or AA player that got released, that doesn't have another to go. So that player could go abroad and play. So I think it'll help those AAA players a little bit more, that they may get a different chance, a different shot to be able to to play internationally, whether that be in the CPB or not. CPB does not have yet restrictions on players, but that the guide is to have basically half your roster foreign and half your roster Chinese local, and they do that for other reasons, right? Because they want the Chinese players need to get up and get better, and so if you're going to get better, you have to go see 95 mile an hour pitching, which they don't really have much of in China right now. But it is a concern. I think Major League Baseball is looking at. Mike, you can drop. Pop in here. But that was a big concern when that decision was made, is that it was just going to restrict, a German kid from getting signed by the Phillies. And just, we got another spot. Let's just see if he develops, right? Yeah. So it is a concern. But I do think that that's a viable pathway if the other pro leagues open up and take more foreign players.
To answer to your question, but Carter Stewart, I think, is important to note too. He was drafted, I think, 8th overall by the Atlanta Braves, and over that year, he couldn't come to terms on a contract with the Atlanta Braves, so he went to NPB, and it was a little bit rough at first for him, but he ended up solidifying himself there in his career and won a Japan series in 2025. So it's not a very common thing, kind of like what LaMelo Ball did in basketball in Lithuania. As a teenager is different, but so I feel like that type of stuff is happening more often, but it's not a viable path necessarily, or a common route that you see someone take.
Yeah, I think he's the only one. I think that's a unicorn a little bit. I think
so. Yeah.
I don't think
there is a Taiwanese pitcher, Joe Shishu. We saw him in the World Baseball Classic. He had offers from teams, including the Dodgers, but he chose the NPB because he could start and thought that was a better development path for him. So, Mike,
farm level there, so you can get more top level experience faster.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mike, it's and Australia, France, all these countries are trying to get more players both into Asian leagues, but also into colleges, even just to get high level experience to come back and coach later.
My only other comment, I put it in the chat, but I want to thank all you guys. It's been a great discussion.
Thanks, Mike. When you get your book done, you can do the next one. Your next book done. Yeah. I think we're just about at time. Any other quick questions?
Just a closing thought on mine. My book is obviously centered around Tony Barnett. I barely talked about him in my response. So I did just want to note that it's extremely rare what Tony did. So he went to NPB with 0 MLB experience. So a lot of the pitchers that some of you may be familiar with, like Colby Lewis, Ryan Vogelsong, right now the other names escape me, but so many people, Miles Michaelis, and the list goes on, who were struggling MLB pitchers. They had a cup of coffee, or they were in the MLB a little bit, but their ERAs were bad. They walked batters like crazy. They were able to rehabilitate their careers in Japan, and added to their pitch arsenals and really turned around their careers like that, boomerang back. Tony is extremely rare in that he left MLB organization in the prime of his career with 0 MLB experience. He was in the minors in AAA. Robert Suarez is the best example, and he's really good now for the Atlanta Braves, although he's currently injured, but it's extremely rare. and he was able to become a fabric of the community there in Tokyo and for the Swallows. He wasn't just a hired gun, as British Swallow super fan David Watkins said in the book. A lot of the foreigners, they just come over for 1 or 2 years, or they keep changing teams, but he played for the same organization in Japan and NPB for 6 years. And now he works for them as a scouting consultant based in the US, but he's looking for the next Tony Barnett, if you will, on the West Coast here, primarily in AAA stadiums. And it's not just talent, it's also just trying to get a feel for who is ready at that point in their career to go halfway across the world, because a lot of people in AAA, they're on the cusp of that next level, and so a lot of times it doesn't make sense. In Tony's case, it did, and it changed his career and his life, and that's what my book documents, and what makes him proud to this day for that.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Michael, anything to close on?
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Jim, for moderating. This was a ton of fun. I could do this for hours and hours and hours. Go buy everybody's book. Aaron's book's great. All of Rob's books are great. Yuriko, her film is phenomenal. And my book is out if you want to go pick that one up.
Nice. And Rob?
Been a lot of fun. Thank you for tuning in. You'll always enjoy talking to all of you. And yeah, let's do it again soon.
I've seen Rob dozens of times in person. I really need to come to your home to see that, everything you have in the background there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, all those balls.
That is really cool. That's what I aspire to have my man cave look like someday.
When you get back to New York, give me a call.
There you go. And then
curating. Sorry, I was just gonna say Rob helped curating the Japanese baseball exhibit at the Hall of Fame, didn't you, Rob?
Yes, I did.
And
yes.
Yuriko, were you involved with that too?
I went in and then showed my film a couple times, but I wasn't curating.
Yuriko, I'll finish with you. Where can we see your film?
Well, so we have a distributor who is going to be releasing the film. I think they're aiming for spring. So they really want to do a limited theatrical. And if you all have like samples and examples of theaters that it should go to, we'd like to be very careful about how we select those theaters, because we obviously can't be sitting next to the Odyssey, but I think there are some audiences that would want to see it in the theater. And we've had a lot of luck and a lot of success in theaters with audiences having fun. And it seems to play well with families too. So anyways, anyone have any ideas, send them my way. And yeah, please see it. And after that, I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it. It's all in the distributor's hands right now.
Great.
So,
well,
but we are going to Japan
the Odyssey.
Also.
You're my Matt Damon, so that's
oh God, I don't know what to do with that comment.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Virtually, I see a lot of people I know in the Zoom call. I appreciate you joining.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks to everyone here too. So I will be selling books and signing them if anyone's interested in the back. But yeah, to whoever's still in the Zoom call, really appreciate you joining. It helped make the event fun and a success. I know that people are spread out all over, or they're in LA but couldn't make it, so it was appreciated that you ended up opening your computer or phone and joining us. Great questions too.
And I think you recorded this, right?
I'll be talking with, it is recorded though, yes, and we'll be able to get you the link. Yuriko, this might be for later, but there was someone on the call that wanted to be connected with you. She was referencing that in the chat. I can give you that separately.
Okay, why don't you just email me the information and I can contact.
Coordinating librarian would be happy to help.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Yuriko. I'm not sure.
Thank you to the public library.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for hosting us. We really enjoyed this. I don't know if Jim is still there. Thank you for moderating. I don't know if I don't think he is,
Yeah, I
but
think he's off now,
I'm thanking him on the record and Rob too, even though I think he already left. Rob and Mike. Thank you,
okay.
everyone.
And thank you, Aaron, for initiating.
My pleasure. Thanks, Eureka. Thank you, everyone.